If you thought inventory was tight in Vancouver, wait till you hear these numbers in Toronto. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Vancouver Life Real Estate Podcast and YouTube channel. Today we're taking a little bit more of an East Coast look, and we're going to get into some numbers in Toronto, a quick look in Calgary as well. But let's start off with a touch on national employment, because employment is going to drive, well, real estate prices and a bunch of other things, including maybe even pushing inflation further up. And why are we saying that? Well, first off, the job rate, the unemployment rate is back to pre-pandemic levels. Overall, unemployment is sitting at 6.7%. This is below our 20-year average of 7.1%. But not all things are created equal here. It is a different labor force than what we saw pre-pandemic. And what we mean by that is first up, the working age labor force is at an all-time high. So the working age is considered between the ages of 15 and 64. 79% of that demographic are currently working. And for reference, this is up from about 71% that we saw back in 1980. But further to that, yeah, there's an interesting divide here. And the people that are earning over $30 an hour or more are sitting at about a 28% increase in employment than pre-pandemic. And then the opposite is happening with those earning less than $20 an hour, where they are a 12% unemployment rate worse or lower, if you will, than the pre-pandemic. So even though there's equal or even a little bit more jobs and actively employed people, it's the people that are earning more money that are more gainfully employed right now.
It's interesting. I mean, immediately that speaks to me in that, you know, the wealth gap is definitely going to be exacerbated if this kind of rate continues. I think it's also interesting because I think COVID kind of introduced a lot of changes in the economy that were maybe at the start or the tilt of it happening, and it kind of acted as a catalyst and got some of these things going quicker. I mean, is it really any surprise that we're doing this on Zoom right now, right? I mean, we've learned to solve problems with technology, and I think that skill, if you will, or is going to be in more demand as we continue down this path, right? And I think, you know, when you look at jobs, I mean, even though they're crying for people to flight attendants and things like this to try and come to work, and they have increased their pay, but still, when you look at the fact that I don't have to jump on an airplane to have a business meeting anymore, I can just hop on Zoom and get the same thing done in 15 minutes as opposed to an entire day. There's going to be a change that comes with that, right? And I think that that's something that COVID has stimulated. Whether it maintains and persists, we'll see. Don't get me wrong, I still think travel is going to be huge when it comes back and the borders continue to open. But I do think the necessity over skill, technology is kind of leading the path in that regard. And I think we're seeing that in the economy, right?
I think you are right there. And I think it's also likely too that because of all the stimulus and curb and whatnot that was paid out to a lot of people, they only stopped that last month. So I think a lot of people that maybe were earning more by staying at home and taking this helicopter money, they've only now, if they hadn't shifted it into a new job or found a new project or passion that they have followed or a new skill set that they've gone after, they're only now really just getting back into the workforce. So I think we'll likely see that $20 an hour lower market see their unemployment rate decrease in the upcoming months here. And I think, you know, a part of why that is because, you know, let's talk about what's coming up next. You know, where are jobs going to go next? And there's a lot of people, or sorry, a lot of companies, like Ryan just hinted at, that are begging people to come back to work right now. They cannot find employees. The numbers look something like this. So about 68% of businesses out there right now are saying they are looking to hire. They have an intention to hire people like immediately. 68%.
Wow. That's a
lot.
Two-thirds. That's a lot.
And then meanwhile, you know, these same companies are reporting labor shortages. 50% 50% of companies are looking for skilled workers right now.
See, I think it'd be really interesting to know is, in that 50% of companies, which ones are tech, which ones are healthcare. I think that would be a really interesting piece to understand, because I think that would also help us understand why people that are making $30 an hour more have seen a 20% increase in jobs in that field. Why is that the case? Right. But that being said, a lot of this design work or tech work is going to result in things like we still need Uber drivers, right? We still need DoorDash delivery. Where that whole side of the game is gonna come back pretty big too, right?
Exactly. And so if we've got 2/3 of companies saying they want to hire, and we've got these employers essentially fighting, it's almost a bidding war over, especially the skilled workers. That inherently is just going to result in an upward pressure in wages. And what happens when people earn more? Generally, they spend more, right? So that's going to push money into the economy. It's going to push housing up further. It's going to push inflation up further because people are going to spend more, and therefore people kind of like to charge more. And you're just going to kind of see that cycle continue to push upwards.
I don't disagree. And, I generally think that, like you said earlier, Dan, the people that are making more money are putting it back into the market, right? They've got cheap, they can still quote unquote get cheap money for now. And that's where it's gone, right? So speaking of which, kind of more glaring than anything is it's gone into Toronto real estate too in some big ways in the last month, right? Toronto home sales, posted their second straight increase, jumping 9.9% month over month. That's numbers that are on par with 2016. Although there's been a 30% reduction in inventory. Whoa.
Yeah, so you're seeing sales volumes similar to the previous peak, and yet with almost a third less inventory. And you know what that does to prices. Realistically, the landscape is calling for prices to continue to rise through early 2022 here, similar to what we predicted a couple months ago to happen in Vancouver. And why is this? Well, sales have dropped about 7% from last year. Sales volumes down from last year. But within that, and this is definitely worth extrapolating a bit on, is do note that condo sales are actually up 29% within that same window. Yes, so what has to go down? Well, detached. Detached home sales are down 17%, while you see the condo sales jumping 29%. Is this the reverse of what we saw, that flock to the suburbs, and now people are coming back? Partially some of that. We're also likely predicting the fact that it's going to be affordability.
Yeah, I think it's going to be largely the fact that detached homes have just become so expensive, and people are spilling over now, going to the next asset class underneath, much like we've talked about in this market, right? I think that number speaks in a big way to that, personally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The talks of interest rates hiking. There's all sorts of articles, 4 hikes, 8 hikes. So people are just throwing numbers, all left, right, and center here about how many they expect to happen in the next 1 to 2 years here. Meanwhile, Bank of Canada and the Fed are saying, look, we're not touching anything till at least April of next year. Fed saying more like July. But the headlines have been grabbed, headlines have been shared, and it does invoke a bit of fear in people, in the sense that, okay, if we wait, we're going to be paying more in interest rates, or our buying power is going to decrease. So what does that do to people? It drives them into the marketplace. Mm-hmm. They go and they get that fixed. They get their pre-approval, they get that locked in, and then they're out shopping. And it's putting kind of like this what feels like a last hurrah into the marketplace that, we've seen for 18 months strong now. But here's people finding more ammunition, throwing more fuel on the fire to get more people into the market, and that's what's happening. Both East Coast to West Coast, like nationally, this is happening.
Yeah, and I wonder if in that happening, when you look down south, I mean, we all heard, inflation hitting above 6%, right, down south, and that's a big number. I mean, it's a 30-year high down in the States. And even them, they've said, look, we're going to run hot. We're going to let it run hot for the next little while. And so, again, I think we can also and you just have to look historically at this, but we do mirror a lot of what happens down there. Our economies are so attached, right? So I think when you start to hear the Federal Reserve and the states making notes about raising interest rates too, you can almost expect that's going to happen here as well, right? The economies are just so closely linked. But yeah, I tend to agree with Dan. I mean, as you know, the news of interest rate hikes is coming. Well, that's going to put a fear of missing out on people, and that's going to drive this last squeeze in the marketplace before we probably get to a point where well, I actually don't know. That's kind of the scary part of this. As much as I want to know, um, I'd like to think that things will cool off. And I think when you start to see an interest rate hike happen, you'll start to see that cooling off. There's some new introductions into the market, like this cooling off period that's going to come into the real estate market. We'll see how that impacts people, but I think there's going to be some big negative sides to that as well. Maybe we can touch on that in a little bit, but anyhow, let's get back into the numbers here.
Yeah, just want to say too, of course, because we have had the banks nationally start to increase the fixed rates on mortgages by about 70 basis points just last month. That has really triggered a lot of people to make that decision to get in as well,
Actually,
because they're seeing it rise. They're seeing it happen. They're like, okay, it's been at the bottom for 18 months or so. The fact that it's ticking up, generally, most people believe it's going to go higher still. So, they want to get in before it's quote unquote too late for them to feel like they can afford what they want to buy.
so I'm at a soccer game last night, a soccer team I play with, and there's guys on the team. There's a couple mortgage brokers, and anyways, real estate's a hot topic kind of anywhere you go in Vancouver, but especially on our team too. And there was this misconception that fixed rates are still quite low. And there's such huge surprise when, these guys are telling us that it's 2.8, 2.9, 2.7, I mean, it wasn't that long ago where fixed rates were 1.6, 1.7, right? And I could tell in the behavior of them being told this, that it was like this, it's time to get off the pot. It's time to make a move, right? You could see the jump in their eyes. So it'll be really interesting to see how the next 6 to kind of 9 months play out here.
Agreed. It's amazing what people do related to interest rates here. It really does affect buying behaviors. Okay, so back to Toronto numbers here. New listings. Obviously, this feeds into inventory. So these new listings were down 34% from last year. That's the lowest the inventory levels have been there since 2014. Or sorry, that's the lowest new listings amount since 2014. And
Wow.
this directly affects inventory.
For sure. And sales, the total number of sales that are taking place, right? Sales are,
Hmm.
remember, lower than 7% this time last year. When your new listings are down by 34%, you've got no inventory.
So what's that number year over year? Oh my God.
Yeah, this total inventory has dropped 55.2%. Yeah, there's a reason for a pause. Not only is that a 20-year low, but the months of inventory, Dan, have dropped to the lowest in history at 0.8, which, if I may say, makes it weeks of inventory, which is, I don't even know. That's kind of terrifying.
Think, yeah. So for a bit of reference here too, GVRD is sitting at about 2.2 months of inventory and feels incredibly tight to any buyer
Yes.
out there.
Yes.
Imagine it was 0.8.
Yes.
That also means that if there were zero new listings that hit the market in Toronto, the existing inventory would be gone in 3 weeks.
I don't think
Just
I've
over
ever
three
heard. I
weeks.
don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about what a systemic supply issue our country has right now in terms of inventory, but these numbers, I mean, it's demanding. It's got to demand like a crisis level kind of intervention here of supply. We got to get homes up quicker. We got to change something. It's just crazy. This is unsustainable in not a good way.
Hmm. So you could imagine with inventory that tight, but sales still going, What are prices going to do? They're going up.
Yep.
Uh, and if you can believe this, prices in Toronto jumped 4.3% just last month.
Holy was, and no wonder people are flocking to condos at a 4.3% gain in price in 1 month. That's credible. I mean, that's what is that? 1.13 million now
That's
is
the average
the
home
average
price in
price.
Toronto. Yeah. So they're catching up because, if you remember here in Vancouver, GVRD, we're at 1.2 million. So we're only about 70K higher than Toronto's average right now. But they're catching up, and they're catching up quick, because Vancouver, GVRD, average home prices 14% up year over year. But Ryan, what have they done in Toronto?
They're up 25%.
In 1 year. The
Ooh.
average home is 25% in 1 year.
Well, and it's crazy because granted that Vancouver, at least on paper right now, in average terms, is a little bit more expensive. But I mean, we're talking an 11% swing. We're not 11% more expensive.
Yeah.
that's a big swing. That's a huge amount of demand,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um,
Think too here, like just at this point eight, I'm having a hard time getting off of this number because it's so incredible. You'd have to add 6 times the inventory that they have right now, 600% more inventory, you would still be in a seller's market. That's how
yeah,
bleak
I
it is.
mean, so I mean, yeah, and those are fundamental economics, right? At the end of the day, they're going to have to use interest rates to cool this down. They're going to have to use monetary policy to change this environment, right? And again, we're going to tinker with it, as opposed to actually providing long-term sustainable change. I mean, skilled workers, carpenters, framers, people who pour, concrete would be unskilled labor, but these things are like, it's no wonder we need them. There's a 40% demand for this kind of stuff right now. And this is for just to help in this situation too, right?
Yeah, because it's getting so extreme, I fear something dumb is going to happen soon. And by dumb, I mean the demand is obviously going to be taxed in a way, or suppressed in a way that is not thought out, and is just going to hurt a lot of people. I don't know, like
Done it
you
before.
can't buy a second home, or whatever it is. Who knows? But I just feel because things are so extreme, the outcries from the general public are about to get loud enough again that they're going to do something similar to what we saw happen in 2017.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, let alone the outcry from people who can't afford one, you're going to start hearing from people who just can't buy anything. And that's a new outcry,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a different issue.
Because I mean, let's think here.
Now we're talking no inventory for anyone.
Yeah, and because of where we sit today, I mean, this isn't going to stop tomorrow, right? Prices based on this landscape have nothing to do but go up. People are scrambling for mortgages. They're getting them. They're still getting low rates. There's nothing to buy, so people are competing. That inherently means higher prices. So at least into early 22, we're looking at right now. And again, this is just like what we're seeing here in Vancouver. Very similar story, but it's almost like it's on steroids in Toronto. It is so extreme out there. I couldn't imagine what it feels like on the ground right now.
Yeah, I agree. we should find out. We know some agents over there. Maybe we'll get them on the show and have a chat with them.
It's a great idea. Let's do it. Okay, so quick look at Calgary now as well. And why we're looking at Calgary? Well, again, it's a city in our neighboring province, and we work with a lot of investors, and they've bought into that province, and it's just well, there's movement there, and there's movement there for the first time in about 7 years, so it's worth talking about here.
It kind of feels like the only place in Canada with some inventory might be Calgary,
right? Yeah, I think you can still largely negotiate in Calgary. Maybe we should have a Calgary agent on as well, and just go
get some perspective,
city by city across Canada for some perspective. Might be a fun series for us to provide for you guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, Calgary on pace for record sales volume. Good for Calgary. It's been a long time, but when we say record, they're on track to be like 61% above their 5-year average now.
That's a blowout.
Yeah. It's a big jump, and this is resulting in inventory at a 7-year low. So, again, Calgary, Alberta as a whole has been flat, 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 flat with their prices for about 6, 7 years now.
Yeah.
So Calgary,
Yeah.
seeing a 9% increase, yeah, it's obviously notable. It's so far behind the national average for the last 6 years, but we are bringing this to people's attention because there's obviously movement in Calgary. Um,
I
this
wonder if
is,
that's
yeah.
largely, well, not largely, but I mean, we've seen, in the US markets, well, markets around the world here, energy has recently become a big problem again, with a lot of green energy not providing the energy required to run the demand that's in place. And so we've seen, a pushback to more traditional fuel sources, right? And with rising oil prices, I think you're starting to see renewed interest, and I'm not going to I'm not going to say the word yet, but is there a bit of a comeback here? There seems to be the groundwork for it, right? I guess it depends on how long do they have, right? With an energy requirement, and because as prices rise, you're going to see more and more economic activity taking place in Alberta, which is great, generally speaking.
hmm Interesting to note as well where the attention in real estate is going. And by that, I mean property type or asset class. And it is so predominantly focused on condos right now. 42% year over year increase in condo sales volumes.
Wow.
That leads the pack by a long shot. And very interesting too, because you got to think, I mean, detached homes there, you can pick one up for
Yeah.
$400,000, all day long. So it's not as much of a price point issue, but that seems to be where all the demand is. And
Hmm.
maybe that's largely because the condos are downtown and that's where they're seeing the renewed jobs again. They're seeing the revitalization.
Mhm.
And
Well, we have seen a big push for tech back that's come back to Calgary, and that's due in part to very low commercial prices
mhm,
for businesses. So there's a low cost of entry, and tech, as we all know, like we've talked about in the cast, you can do that kind of from anywhere, right? If you've got a portal access, you don't have to be in Vancouver. You can be in Calgary, and you can live in a condo that's $250,000 and make 130,000, right? That's a very nice lifestyle. So
absolutely. So we're going to keep an eye on that as well as everything else that we do. I think that one wraps it up for us today. Thank you as always for listening, watching. Please subscribe if you're, enjoying it and get some value. And we will be back next week with an updated episode for you.